So many people are saying so many things. So MadMan presents What the are they saying? So today we're going to talk about what the fuck, man? Who put that censored bleep sound effect? Let me try it one more time. So today we're going to talk about sex. Sex. So let me tell you a story. I was about 4 or 5 years of age, and I was really curious how a woman becomes pregnant after getting married, right? So I asked my sister, who was about 20 years of age then, and her answer was because after getting married, they sleep together. And that made me even more curious because how only by sleeping in the same bed a woman becomes pregnant, right? That was my question. So, what I'm trying to tell you here is society is always trying to suppress sex, right? Whether it be religious reasons or whatever reasons it may be, but society is always trying to suppress sex. It is not much talked about. So it reminds me that so there is always this chapter focused on male and female reproductive organs and how like sex happens and all those things. And believe me, that's the worst nightmare for any teacher to teach that subject in the class. And they're always trying to use words to make it sound like it's everything but sex. So that proves that we're always trying to suppress the feeling of sex. We're guilty, we're ashamed to even express anything related to sex, right? But the most important thing that we forget is sexual tendencies are absolutely natural. I mean, in fact, in order for human race to continue, sexual tendencies must be there. Because if people stop having sex, then human race will probably be extinct, right? So just like each and every animal, the sexual tendencies are also in human beings solely for the continual of human race, right? So what I'm trying to say is it is absolutely natural, but we're always trying to cover it up. Whenever there's like sexual tendency, whenever you have some thoughts related to sex, you're always trying to cover it up to make it look like it does not exist, right? And see, human mind does not have delete option, right? So the only thing you can do is cover it up, and the more you cover it up, the bigger it becomes. And sex is one of those things. You cover it up to the extent that the pile of sex is the biggest in your mind. So the more effort you put to cover it up, the more focus you are giving to it, to the extent that it is not natural anymore. Because whatever you try to suppress, it finds its own channel to express itself, right? And sex has become one of those things. See, we're brought up in such a society that even talking about these things makes you feel guilty, right? Because the kind of image that the society has created of a good man is not someone who talks about sex, not someone who freely expresses anything about sex. So because of this, there is always this factor of guilt, right? And see, if you're riding on a bicycle and you see a stone in front of you, and all you're saying to yourself is, don't hit that stone, don't hit that stone, don't hit that stone, right? So by doing that, you're putting more focus on the stone. Now all you see is that stone. So now the probability of you hitting that stone is much more than before, right? I think they call it reverse psychology, right? So basically, what I'm trying to say is there is this natural tendency in us, right? And we're trying to cover it up. And we are always guilty of indulging in sex. Now, let's look at this thing called guilt, right? So when you're guilty of doing something, what you're saying is you have a different image of what kind of person you are, but the act that you've done does not belong to the kind of person you are. It is not something that the kind of person you are would do, right? So you're guilty. Now, a human being cannot stay with this feeling of guilt. He has to come up with something to get out of this guilt. So he does the only thing that everybody does, and that is telling himself that he is not going to repeat it. He's not going to do it again, right? That's why you see most overweight person are guilty of eating. They have this guilt in the background when they eat something, right? Most smokers who are guilty of smoking are the ones who do it more. That's why you see people are always making New Year resolution to get back into shape or stop smoking, right? And let me tell you, till this date, I've never seen who committed to stop smoking as a New Year resolution and completely stopped smoking. No, I've never seen anyone. The simple reason is because when you're trying to suppress something, you are putting much more effort to cover it up. And the paradox of it is that the thing that you're trying to remove now becomes the only highlighted thing in your mind. So naturally you are more attracted towards it, naturally you are more pulled by it, right? It becomes so big, it becomes so exaggerated in your mind that it is not natural anymore. So okay, we accept that we suppress sex and all those things, but what to do now? So now the goal is to move more towards acceptance, not towards unacceptance, but towards acceptance. So how do we do that? So now we should start approaching sex by totally accepting it, which means that you're not taking it as a crime. You don't have the background of guilt when you're indulging in sex, right? So we indulge in sex the way we listen to music or we play games. So what do I mean by that is, see, when you're listening to a music or when you're playing games, you're not chasing some image that you have in your mind, right? You're not chasing an end goal. It is happening moment to moment, right? Just remember your favorite thing to do. Now, the only reason that it is your favorite thing to do is because there is total acceptance while you're doing it, which means that when you're in the act of doing it, there is no thought that wants you to get out of it. So, when that happens, it's a moment to moment happening and it is not a compulsion, right? So the only way towards acceptance is if we approach sex not with a feeling of guilt, not with the feeling of shame, but with total acceptance. See, because nature is not something that you only see outside of you. You are nature itself, right? So these natural tendencies, this desire for sex is absolutely natural. Now, when you're not accepting it, you're trying to go against the current of water. But when you're accepting it, you're flowing with the current of water. So don't put effort to resist and create the friction, because by doing that you're going against nature. Because believe me, nature versus you is the worst kind of fight and you are bound to lose. So the best thing is just to surrender to nature and make it as natural as possible. So having said that, thank you for tuning in and thank you for your love and support. I really enjoyed talking about sex today. And if you want to buy helpful books, just go to www.hellomadman.com. And also, people who have made it to the end, if you're interested in football, as in like soccer, I also do football commentaries just for fun. Like there's this Chelsea versus Tottenham coming in next week. So I do commentaries in these interesting games, and I'll put the link to my Clubhouse account below. And if you want to join, just join it on that day. Having said that, thank you again. Thank you.